This video will cover how to record current living situation HMIS data element 4.12. Before we get started demonstrating how to record current living situation within our HMIS, it's important we understand why this data element is collected. In front of me, I have the HMIS data standards for 2020 that was issued in June of this year. If I scroll down to current living situation, this is where I can see exactly what programs require this particular data element. Current living situation should be recorded by all programs with the funder program component of HUD COC, Street Outreach and Coordinated Entry, HUD ESG, Street Outreach and Night by Night Emergency Shelters, HHS PATH, and HHS RHY. This is the HMIS data standards, which is a document that is intended more so for end users. And if I come to data element 4.12 and click on current living situation, what you'll see is that HUD has given us some rationale as to why, when, and how this data element is collected. To record each contact with the people experiencing homelessness by street outreach and other service projects, and to provide information on the number of contacts required to engage the client, as well as to document current living situation as needed in any applicable project. Data collection instructions. Record the date and location of each interaction with a client by recording the current living situation. The current living situation with the client will occur at the same point as project start, and recording the client's prior living situation and therefore requires a record to be open in HMIS for the client. Refer to guidance in the HMIS manual for more information. The way that our HMIS project entry assessment forms are set up, this data element is automatically part of the entry assessment, which happens at the time that the client's record is created if the client doesn't have a record in HMIS already. Continuing, if a client's current living situation in a temporary or permanent from a living situation options list of headers, record additional housing status information to support the determination of intimate or at-risk homelessness housing statuses based on HUD's definitions of homelessness. All street outreach projects are expected to record every contact made with each client by recording their current living situation, including when the project start, prior living situation, or date of engagement is recorded on the same day. There may or may not be a contact made at project exit. If a client meets COC requirements for an auto exit, their project exit date would be backdated to the date that their most recent contact date according to their current living situation record. Contacts that require the collection of current living situation include activities such as conversation between a street outreach worker and a client about their well-being or needs, an office visit to discuss their housing plan, or a referral made to another community service. For coordinated entry projects, record current living situation anytime any of the following occurs. A coordinated entry assessment or coordinated entry event is recorded, or the client's living situation changes, or if a current living situation hasn't been recorded for longer than a community-defined length of time. The COC must be involved in the determination of community-defined length of time. Number 4, at project start. Mobile HMIS data entry can be helpful for working in the field. If it is not possible, data will need to be securely recorded and transported for data entry at an office, or data can be entered remotely by a colleague by phone. Night-by-night emergency shelter should only record current living situation if the interaction between the shelter personnel and the client goes beyond a basic provision of shelter services. A current living situation for emergency shelter does not include activities of daily sheltering, such as bed registration, requests for personal items, dinner, sign up, and meals. Nor should it be redundant with data element 4.14, which is a bed night date. System logic and other system issues. Collect once for each contact made. The system must be able to store theoretically unlimited number of current living situations for an enrollment ID associated with the indicated project types. Data collection requirement for path-funded components is limited to the following fields from the current situation options list. Place not meant for human habitation. Emergency shelter, including hotel or motel, paid forward emergency shelter, voucher, or RHY funded home shelter, safe haven, other, and worker unable to determine. Field 3 should be populated by the list of CLC project names. Indicates that the project is a continuum of care project. Dependent A and its discrepancies can be used to calculate imminent or at-risk homelessness housing statuses based on HUD's definition of homelessness. One record of contact is required as an update for each contact made along with the response to field 2, which may change over the project stay. Current living situation is a new data element that went into effect on October the 1st of 2019 and replaced the data element contact. Now that we understand and we've read HUD's rationale for collecting and recording current living situation, let's move into HMIS to see how this data element should be recorded. Currently, I'm on my home workspace. I'll need to navigate over to my client workspace. And navigating to my client workspace, I'm just going to start a brand new enrollment. So I'm going to take a look to see if Frida has an enrollment. My client Frida has an enrollment in HMIS, and she does not. So therefore, I'm going to click on Intake, and I want to add a new client. I'm searching to see if Frida has an existing record, and she does not. Now I can record all of Frida's information. Okay, I'll go ahead and speed this process up a little bit. You can see that current living situation, if you're looking at your workflow, it's going to be over here to your left. Here we come to data element, current living situation. I do want to point out to you that this is a required data element. Again, this is a required data element for our coordinated entry and street outreach programs, as well as our emergency shelter night by night programs, as well as PATH and RHY street outreach. You do have the option to skip this question over in the bottom right corner. Please do not skip this question, otherwise your reports will not reflect accurately. So we'll need to select our client's current living situation as of now, and this data element is being recorded at entry. You should and will see this data element anytime you perform a update assessment, which is a during program assessment for your client, as well as an annual assessment for your client. And if your program does not have auto exits enabled, then that means that you are manually exiting your clients. Therefore, you will see this data element at exit and is required. So location details. Maybe your client is staying in a tent on the corner of 8th and 7th Street. That's perfectly acceptable. Contact is no longer an HMIS data element, so you don't necessarily have to record contact. If we come back to the data standards, what you'll see is current living situation is asking for a date, and that date is here. If this is not the date that the information was collected for your client, then be sure to backdate that. You're selecting your client's living situation. If I were to click on Appendix A, that would give us a list that appears here in this drop-down box. And if you were to choose a non-homeless situation for your client, then just notice that you're prompted to record some additional questions for your client. So you'll want to make sure that you record those additional questions. And then be sure to click Save in the bottom right corner, and we finished our workflow. Keeping in mind that this data element has to be recorded. If we go back to HUD's rationale that we read here in our HMIS Data Standards Manual, this data element for our street outreach program is expected to be recorded each time a contact is made with a client. So in HMIS, that means that you would do a update assessment each time that you make contact with the client. And so this is my client's enrollment here. If the following day I make another contact with my client, then I am expected to come to my client's record. I'm going to choose update/annual, and I'm simply going to go through the workflow. And I'm going to say during program enrollment, which is also an update assessment. And this is going to open a workflow for me. If none of the other questions have changed for my client, then I can default last insurance status. And I can save in the bottom right corner. Notice that the barriers pre-populate for you from what was recorded at entry, so I can click Save and Close. If my client's domestic violence situation has changed, then I can simply make that change here by selecting yes because I recorded no at entry. I'm going to click Save in the bottom right corner. This is going to bring me to Income and Sources. If nothing has changed, then I can default my last assessment and click and Save in the bottom right corner. And now I come to my current living situation again. And this is where you're going to record that data element for your client. Again, this is expected to be recorded each time that a contact is made with your client. And this is applicable to all of our street outreach projects. Are expected to record every contact made with each client by recording the current living situation. This is included at project start, so you shouldn't skip over that data element. If you're doing an update assessment or an annual assessment or anytime you make a contact with a client, then that should be recorded. If no contact is made at the time that the client is exited from the project, then it is acceptable that you skip over that question when you're exiting the enrollment. And just as a reminder, such activities as to when a current living situation should be recorded, that's in conversation between the street outreach worker and the client about the client's well-being or their needs, office visits to discuss housing plans, or making a referral. For coordinated entry, projects, and this will be we currently, as of today, which is July the 31st of 2020, we do not have a coordinated entry project in HMIS for our continuum of care. We are working on that, and that should go live in the system in the coming weeks. So for coordinated entry, you should be recording the living situation each time a coordinated entry assessment or coordinated entry event is recorded, or the client's current living situation is recorded, or if the client's current living situation hasn't been recorded for longer than a community defined length of time, and we will email that information out to you. And also at project start, I do want to come down to night by night emergency shelters. And for our night by night emergency shelters, this data element should be recorded anytime the conversation goes beyond the client's basic needs of what's happening in the shelter. So, for example, it is not necessary that you record a current living situation anytime a client checks into a bed or anytime they receive a meal. Anytime you sit down and have a conversation about your client, about referring them to other services, about coming up with a housing plan, those are examples of when the emergency shelter should record a current living situation for your client. And as it relates to data quality for this particular data element, this will be a part of the data elements that's being measured on your data quality reports that we send out to agencies on a quarterly basis. And this will conclude the training tutorial for recording current living situation.